questions.
I have a question about something you mentioned in a previous video. You said something along the lines of like, you can't believe your gut yet, or you can't trust your gut yet. And so I guess I have a general question around that. Like, we have this concept of like your gut feeling or instinct.
Who did I say that to?
I don't remember which.
Well, see, it matters to whom I said it, and in what context I said it, because that's a big kind of nebulous statement, and so.
Right.
But let's keep going. Just I'm not sure I would say that as a blanket statement.
No, it was.
I mean, I think you should trust your gut with things like fear. Gavin de Becker has a book called The Gift of Fear. Yeah, so there's certain things. I mean, certainly the animal instincts are certainly should be paid attention to, like fear for bodily harm, things like that.
What about when the fear is like from thinking?
Well, that's a little less reliable, because you could think yourself into paralysis.
Right.
What do they call it? Analysis paralysis, or paralysis by analysis.
Right. So how do you distinguish?
But that wouldn't be the gut. See, that's not trust in your gut. That's trust in your mind. Big difference.
So what would be an example of trusting your gut?
You're walking down the street one night, and you get this weird feeling that somebody's following you, but you don't know. But you haven't seen anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But your animal senses, that have evolved over millions of years, are very, very attuned to predators or danger like that in ways that we don't necessarily understand scientifically. So the gift of fear is that if you pay attention to that, then it could pay off big time. And just because we don't have any scientific or good psychological or psychophysiological explanation doesn't mean that it's not something that should be paid attention to. That's very different than thinking yourself into a frenzy, like the mullah does, the mullah Nasruddin.
Right.
So the gut instincts are very different than the mind chatter. I mean, both should be paid attention to, but the gut is different.
Right. Would it make sense to say like the gut instincts have to be in the moment, or like?
Oh yeah, you don't have gut instincts in the past or in the future. They're always in the present.
Or about a situation that's in the present, right? I mean,
well, we're getting pretty abstract. I mean, conceivably, your gut could be telling you something, and your mind doesn't know it yet, or your mind is in denial, or it's in displacement, or it's in projection, or it's in some other ego defense strategy, and your gut knows something that your mind doesn't want to accept. It's possible.
Okay.
We're fascinating creatures, us poor humans. We're like angelic beings strapped to an animal body. Very interesting situation, and why we're here like this is really worth pondering. I mean, most of us are, would be angelic beings that are strapped to these primate animal bodies.
Why do you say most of us?
Well, some of us are actually devils. Some people are really demonic, some people are evil. And some people are just pure animal too.
You're saying some people are fundamentally evil?
It sure looks that way. Other people are fundamentally good. I mean, if you spend any time around mentally handicapped people,
Mm.
I mean, occasionally they'll hurt themselves, but they're just kind and loving and beautiful people in the vast majority. And you can make a child evil. That's one of the tragedies of our world.
Mm.
And we've done that systematically for a long time, and now we're paying the price for that. Just like you can make an animal hostile and angry and aggressive.
Right.
When will we ever learn?
Okay. I
Question.
have another question.
All right.
So I pay attention. I've been trying to pay attention to my energy and things that are energy sinks.
Energy sinks in that they suck energy out of you.
Yes.
Okay, good.
And the one that I've noticed the most right now is aimlessly looking at information online, whether it's Twitter or Instagram or the news.
Yes, unfortunately.
And I've noticed that one's,
And it's gotten worse too. It's gotten worse online too recently.
Has it?
I think so, yeah.
But I've also noticed that, if I have the energy, it's easier to catch myself and to, be mindful about it and then do something else if it's not at the right time or, if it's not useful. But I've noticed if I'm already low energy, if I'm tired for whatever reason, then it's a lot harder and I'm a lot more likely to like cycle into that.
Okay, so there's a few strategies. I think the best one is to just try and stay conscious as long as you can, and then after you shut it down, check to see how you feel afterwards. And if you feel like you've been taken advantage of, well, you have. So why would it have gotten worse? Well, because the AIs, right, which are designed to capture human attention, are, as you know, they've been fine-tuned and they get better and better and better at doing this. And damn if some of that stuff isn't interesting, some of it, right? But interspersed with that is stuff that is designed to steal your attention. They talk about paying attention. Well, you have to pay, right? And so you pay for something, but you don't get much in return. Occasionally you learn something about nature, hopefully, if it's real footage. But interspersed with that is all this other gunk that's just designed to make money for other people by getting you to pay with your attention. And so if you realize that you're the product and your attention is the currency, then perhaps you unless you feel like giving away one of your most vital assets, you don't do it. But admittedly, it's difficult sometimes. But if you just check in on how you feel afterwards, it becomes less and less compelling. That's one thing. Two is you need something better to do, right?
Yeah.
And so usually that's work or love or play, but any of those are better than just squandering your life. And then a third thing to recognize is that there's attempts to actually hurt you online too. I don't know how conscious it is. Maybe it is conscious, but there are malevolent forces that want to sow discord and foment unrest and disquiet and dissatisfaction in the population. And so don't let yourself be a victim. And I think you've taken the first step. If you realize that you're squandering energy, which you need for all kinds of other things, then it should take care of itself as long as you stay conscious.
Okay.
Does that help a bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, check in on how you feel, because your body knows, your body-mind complex knows at a deeper level. Question.
I mean, it's like eating junk food.
Something like that.
But, well, okay, so that answers part of the question, but I think taking the junk food analogy, it's like eating junk food is a lot easier when, I don't have the time and energy to properly cook.
True.
And so it seems like there's like need for a strategy to like, what else can I do when I'm low energy?
Some people respond better to something more structured, right? So you would say, okay, I'm going to set aside 5 minutes every 2 hours, or every 4 hours, or every hour, or whatever, all right, and do my social media, because that's where you get your news too, right?
Yeah.
And there's information on your phone that you need for work and for other things.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so some people, and you'd have to check this. You could. Some people really respond at certain times in their lives to real structure, and so there's two ways you could do that. One is you could decide on time limits and stick to them, or something a little bit more fun. You can graph your usage on a chart that you keep, and you can watch your life. You can watch your life as that line goes up and down. Better to graph the time that you're not on there than the time you are on there, but you could do the inverse or something, and then create a behavioral feedback loop in addition to the subjective one. That's a little bit more concrete, and that will work. That will definitely work.
What do you mean as a creative feedback loop?
Well, we can tell when something felt bad 5 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we can kind of remember something feeling bad-ish a day ago or 2 days ago, maybe. But in terms of the overall trends, in terms of quality of life, your brain's not set up to look at weeks and months at a time. So if you graph it, you can actually see the trends, right? It's like like any health monitor. Or
right.
Sometimes people do that with their weight, or they do it with how much they lift, right? And so now that's what I mean by the feedback loop for a longer frequency or longer time frame, and many people find that very, very helpful. I mean, to the point to where if you haven't tried it at least once in your life with something, you can use it with studying, you can use it with workouts, you can use it with this, but you should try that technique because it's very powerful.
So in this particular case, what would I be graphing exactly?
There's 24 hours in a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would graph the amount of time that you spent on social media each day, for example, and you just create a little chart. Better to graph the time off of social media in my mind, because you want to graph something that's a positive, if possible. So does that make sense? I mean, is that do you want more details on that?
Well, I guess I'm a little confused. How is like just that alone? How is that helpful?
You can see your life from a distance. And then you can correlate that with how your life is going in general. And then you also get a feeling of accomplishment and a feeling of mastery. And the brain likes that. The mind likes that.
I see.
It's like a reinforcement schedule.
Right. I mean, should I also be graphing something like that's positive, like how I'm feeling or something, so that I can see the correlation?
You could do that, but that's a more nebulous. You could do that, but the problem with that is it's so subjective. And how do you feel? Right. I mean, you could. How many different ways do you feel during a day?
Right.
And so how are you going to know which one to graph? It's probably better to stick with concrete things.
Okay. So I know the iPhone already graphs the app usage.
Yeah, but that's still more iPhone. It doesn't have the same punch. I mean, you could go, you stare at it, you look at it, you go, oh wow, I spent so much time on this, and then you just swipe to another page.
Yeah.
Another thing, just for completeness sake, is holidays. From the damn thing. And the best of all, of course, is to get out in nature and get away from it all for a while.
Yeah, that's what I noticed.
The world is getting increasingly difficult for humans, for contemporary humans. But we knew that things were going to get bad. Remember, we said that things were going to come to a boil. Years ago, we saw this coming, and here it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's probably going to get worse. I mean, it could conceivably get better, but it doesn't. There's nothing that I see that makes it look that way. And so, job one has to be protect your psyche and your soul.
Right.
Your psyche, your soul, your mind, and your body. Because there are people who want to control you, abuse you, and use you for their own ends. I read somewhere, I don't know if it's true, I hope it is, that the younger generation of kids coming up, you know how teenagers always rebel?
Mm-hmm.
They're rebelling by, like putting down their phones and hanging out and doing kid stuff. I don't know if there's truth to that. I hope there is.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a book or a movie or something called Revenge of the Machines?
Hey, I don't know.
There probably will be soon. So yeah, we got to be very, very careful, and we're not being very careful.
Yeah.
There's just mass confusion and chaos and greed. People trying to grab what they can before the end comes, which makes no sense, but well, that's cheery. That's cheerful. Let's lighten it up a bit. Let's change the subject.
I guess one quick follow up on that. I was thinking about like the collective consciousness, and I mean social media is a direct
noosphere.
Yeah.
Yeah, good topic.
So social media feels like it's almost like a manifestation of the noosphere, right?
Well, before we go to social media, let's talk about the noosphere. Oh man. your consciousness, my consciousness, is the collective consciousness. Our minds are the collective minds. Krishnamurti, when he talks about how his mind is the mind of humanity, not just humanity now, but millions of years of evolution as well, he's absolutely correct. And people wonder where their thoughts come from. Well, this is one of the major sources. They come from our collective consciousness. That's a hard thing for people to accept, because they imagine their minds are these sealed, like hermetically sealed, like bowling balls that are hollow and have their thoughts in there. But that's not how. We can't find anything like that in neurobiology. Conceivably, I mean, there may be holographic kind of memories, but that's a theory. And other than that, we can't find the memories. We can't find the thoughts. It's possible that, yeah, of course, it's mediated through the individual. I mean, the way we visualize it is through the individual brain organ, but the consciousness of mankind is a consciousness of mankind. That doesn't mean there aren't loci of relative concentrations of different things like that, but our consciousness is collective, and that's the hardest part of it all. And even if let's say you were to isolate yourself completely, like Krishnamurti did, for extended periods of time, nonetheless, you are still subject to the consciousness of humanity. Hence the sorrow. And hence sometimes the feelings of desperation and even suicidality. And self-destruction and things like this. So we must be aware of this if we're going to protect ourselves. And we must evolve past this if we're going to survive. Does that sound totally crazy?
No.
When Krishnamurti says it, he just pronounces it, you know.
It makes sense if you pay attention to your mind.
Exactly. If you pay attention to your mind, you'll start to notice, well, wait a minute, where the hell did that thought come from? Or what the hell? Why do I feel this? I don't feel that way. Where did this thought come from? And then you start to realize it comes from outside. Not outside of humanity, but outside of your individual cranium. And that step forward is a huge step, sir, towards maturity and also understanding what our true circumstance is as humanity. Just like all intelligence is collective intelligence, all consciousness at this level, I shouldn't say all, but much of it is collective also. For better, for worse, and these days I'm afraid it's for worse. But you have to be really sensitive to know that. You have to have spent some time in meditation to clear out the gunk, your own gunk. And then when it's clear enough, and you see these clouds coming from the east or the west, and you realize that these are not my clouds. Where are they coming from? So very good point, very important point, and one that's not really emphasized much, except by Krishnamurti. It's not a pleasant thought. And it's more true these days because of our mass communications. Follow up?
I was trying to find a passage, but in Buddhism, there's the idea that suffering comes from your mind's interpretation of a situation and not from the situation itself.
Yes.
How does that work when you're part of the collective consciousness?
It requires, remember the paramitas, the six kind of like cardinal virtues or qualities or necessary capacities include insight. And with sufficient insight, you realize that this is a dream world. And understanding that this world we've created with our minds with our brains and our minds. It's just that. It's a virtual reality created by a mechanism. It's not a computer, but it's virtual in the sense that we construct it with our minds. And then realizing that it is a dream. Still, there's sorrow, because who wants a nightmarish, horrible dream? But at a deeper level, there's an understanding that nothing real, nothing substantial is being touched or harmed in any way. It can't be. And so this is why it's so critically important, I believe, for humans to at least touch base with home once in their life, so they know what home is, and then they don't fear death. They don't fear anything. That's one of the rationales, and this is why the Buddhists can talk about the end of suffering, because they understand that the reality of all this is not anything like this at all. The reality is clear light, love, truth, beauty, and intelligence beyond anything we can conceive of. And so having that, knowing that, not believing that, knowing that, takes care of the fear. But that requires insight, understanding, comprehension of sorts. Now, some people are able to get close to something like that just using pure faith. You know, somebody told them it was true and they believe it. That's some people. Other people, their faith, if it's based on belief, wavers because it's just belief. And belief can be changed. But knowledge cannot, understanding cannot. This is, once you reach a certain point in this endeavor, you can't go back. And so people wonder what the purpose of life is. Well, the purpose of life is to find home. And the entire universe is trying to bring you there, but our minds get in the way. Is that making sense?
Mm-hmm.
Home is where you were before you were born, and where you'll be, where you are now, but also where you'll be after you die. But you won't have the mind creating all this other, admittedly extraordinary experience. Admittedly gorgeously beautiful and also horrific at times. But this world is not designed to work, have you noticed?
Mm-hmm.
It's a temporary abode.
Right.
It's just a resting place, a place where you stop along your way and admire the flowers and the clouds and the trees.
Yeah, I read this passage in Dream Conversations. And it says, for those who know the nature of the world, lack of complete satisfaction or fulfillment in things of the world is in itself advice to cultivate detachment.
Good. Read that again slowly. That's really nice.
For those who know the
what page is
nature
that?
of
Just
the
out
world.
of curiosity. This is the book which
34.
I recommend for intermediate Zen people. 34?
Yeah. Should I read the whole thing?
Yeah. Just read it slowly where people can get it.
Okay. It's called Worldly Feelings. Attraction and aversion are two feelings that keep people within the bondage of ignorant, repetitive behavior. Those who seek only what pleases them and try to avoid what displeases them are acting in this way because they do not realize the nature of the world. For those who know the nature of the world, lack of complete satisfaction or fulfillment in things of the world is in itself advice to cultivate detachment. If people do not crave to be pleased, they will not be displeased. What causes mental suffering is not the environment itself, but the mind itself.
Yeah, beautifully put. It's our minds. Again, this is why the Buddhists can say we have an end to suffering. It's the mind that creates the suffering.
Mm.
One of the advantages to being old is that everything that you have desired, collected, accumulated, whatever, those gradually start being taken away from you.
Mm.
And then your body's taken, then your sight or your hearing or your strength or your good looks or your health, all of these, they're just taken away from you one by one. And if you don't get the message then, you're never going to get it. So no, it's set up it's designed to bring you home. You can do it sooner or later. I recommend doing it sooner, and you can avoid a lot of suffering in your life.
Mm.
And it just makes the world a much more beautiful place if you understand what its role is. Its role is not permanent in any sense of the word. Okay, sir? Anything else before we stop?
I had another question about passage in Dream Conversations.
Oh, good. I love this book.
It talks of, this passage talks about two practices designed to counteract the tendency to be distracted by feelings related to pleasing and displeasing situations. It's actually the next passage after the one I just read.
Okay, page 34.
35 for this
okay.
one. And these practices, it says, in displeasing situations, you counteract irritation, resentment, and lament by viewing such situations as products of your own disagreeable behavior in the past. What does that
Okay,
mean?
I'm going to read the intro. The founder of Zen spoke of two ways of access to awakening, by principle and by practice. Access by principle refers to direct unification with the fundamental without depending on training. This is, you got to be really lucky for this one. Since this is not possible for everyone, the founder also taught 4 practices. So in principle, you could just go boom, and you be right there in the foundation. Just annihilate the ego or remove it entirely, and you're there. I mean, it's not something you acquire, it's something that's always there. But that's not possible for most people. So since this is not possible for everyone, the founder also taught 4 practices. The first 2 practices are designed to counteract the tendency to be distracted by feelings related to pleasing and displeasing situations. In displeasing situations, you counteract irritation, resentment, and lament by viewing such situations as products of your own disagreeable behavior in the past. In pleasing situations, you counteract complacency and attachment by reflecting on the impermanence of all conditions. These 2 practices are used to equilibrate the mind in order to open the way for unadulterated concentration on higher objectives. Okay, good. So
So the one about pleasing situations and reflecting on impermanence, that one makes sense to me. But in displeasing situations, I don't quite understand what it means to view a situation as a product of your own disagreeable behavior.
When you're older, or when you've reflected enough, you begin to realize that a lot of the things that you thought that were good that you did were not in fact good. They were in fact selfish.
Mm.
When you're older, you realize that a lot of the good that the world says it was doing was not in fact good. It was just ignorance. Mm-hmm. When you're older, or when you have more insight, you'll begin to see that your contribution to all of the troubles has been significant, either by neglect or by action, or both. And so when you have time to reflect on these things, you begin to see that, it was your mind that contributed to this whole situation or created the whole situation. And then you begin to realize that it was out of your prior ignorance your prior lack of understanding, your prior lack of discipline or patience or generosity, for example, using 3 paramitas right off the top, that these things have come about. Right?
So sort like it's like karma, essentially.
Very good. Like karma, except it's not just the word karma. It talks about the mechanism, and you got to understand the mechanism too. You can't just say, "Oh, it's bad karma." It's bad karma that you created.
Right.
But not to beat yourself up, or not to, because we're all in the same boat, right? But then you start to realize that it was your mind that created the problem, and it's your mind that's suffering from the problem now. And then you lose the intense eroticism that we have for the mind, and instead of becoming our master, it becomes a tool. And you keep that puppy in its cage, you keep that bull in its pen, and you don't let it run roughshod over your existence. Because that's where fear and hatred and anger and all these other things come from. And love doesn't really come from the mind. It comes from another place, from the heart, let's say, just as a manner of speaking. And so love is our natural state, but it's covered over mightily by all of this garbage that the mind constructs. Okay, sir?
Okay.
Anything else before we stop?
No.
Okay. Guard your mind out there, and you got to discipline it too, because like I've been saying for a long time, they're coming for you. They're coming for all of us. And it's not just humans now, it's humans with AIs. Very dangerous stuff. Okay, sir?
Okay.
Take good care.
You.
We'll see you later. Ciao.
Thanks.